hopefully. All right, so guys, first thing we're going to do, just to kind of make things easy, we are going to paint our two primary colors down first, okay? So there's not going to be any mixing involved for these first two wedges. So you guys should have gotten only just a small amount of yellow and blue, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, it may seem like an easy idea to just paint this in, but there are definitely tricks and tips to how to do this. So when you do this, you want to get in the habit of just first grabbing your paint from the outside edge of the paint pile, okay? It's not really necessary right now, but when we start mixing colors, you definitely want to continue that practice because that's going to prevent your paint from getting messed up with other colors, okay? So take your paint from the outside. So I've got just a little bit of paint on my brush here. And when you start painting, you're going to start painting in the middle, okay? Because when you first grab that paint, you've got a lot of paint on your brush and it's hard to control. So if you start in the middle, and you'll notice when you squish that paintbrush down, all the paint kind of oozes out, and it can be hard to get that to be a nice sharp edge if you're working against the edge. So when you do this, start always in the middle and then push your paint to the outside edge so you can control it better, okay? So again, start in the middle, push the paint to the edge. So just like everything else in here, guys, craftsmanship is part of your grade. So you need to make sure that you are painting these in nice and neat. Now, a couple of questions I've had from other bells. Do I need to wet my brush first before I paint? The answer to that is no, and I actually don't recommend it because water will thin out your paint, okay? And it'll make it look more transparent. We want this color to look very saturated, very bold. So you really want to start with a dry brush. That goes to say too then that when you wash your brush off in between colors, that's why that paper towel is really important. You got to make sure that you dry off that brush really, really well before you start painting with it. So again, start in the middle, push the paint to the outside edge. And I'm always spinning this thing around, so don't feel like you can move this. And I'm actually starting with my big brush. The reason why I like to use the big brush rather than the small one is because that big brush does hold more paint, so I don't have to go back to my palette as often. And it's got a really good point on it, so there's really no reason why I shouldn't be able to use it. I only use small brushes when I have to. Big brushes are good to use too for when you're mixing colors together. They just can hold up a lot better, whereas small brushes, they just get wrecked a lot when you mix with them. All right, so do that for both your yellow and your blue. And remember, when you're switching your colors, make sure that you're washing that color off and you're drying it really, really well with your paper towel. Don't want to have a lot of water in your brush. So now I'm going to go paint my blue. Start in the middle, push the paint to the outside edge so you can control the paint better. So again, start in the middle, push it to the edge. You don't want to have a lot of paint on your brush when you're working right up against that edge. So when you get your yellow down and it looks good, go and paint in your blue. Now if you do notice that your paint looks kind of thin, more on the transparent side than on the opaque side, again, it's probably because you have too much water on your brush let your first layer dry first, and then just simply paint over it with another layer. That'll fix that. But it's key to make sure that you dry, those layers dry in between. Okay, so again, I'm using the big brush. Using the big brush. All right, so I've got my blue and my yellow painted down. So now I'm ready to start dealing with my secondary color. So I'm going to do my secondary color first, not my intermediates or my tertiary. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I want everybody to kind of stop for a second and watch this. I've already done this once before, so you're going to see some other piles on my plate here. So when I do this, the key to mixing paint, and there's a formula that you need to use, is that you always start with your lightest color first, and then you add the darker to that pile. Okay, so listen to what I'm saying. You start with your lightest color first, and then you mix a small amount of your darker to the pile. So I'm going to be mixing yellow and blue together. What is my lightest color in those two? Yellow. Yellow. So what I'm going to do, again, I am going to take my paint from the edge of my pile. I'm not going to go straight through the middle. And I'm going to get about, I'm going to start with about 3 scoops here. So 3 scoops of paint, kind of try to get that to come off. So I'm going to start with 3 scoops. And then what I'm going to do, and again, I haven't washed off my brush. I don't need to, actually. I'm going to go to my blue pile over here, and I'm just going to basically just get a little bit, and literally, look at that. That's all that I'm grabbing, just that little amount of blue. I call this a dab. So, just a little dab of blue. So what I'm going to do is I got 3 scoops of yellow, 1 small dab of blue, and I'm going to mix this in and watch this. You can see just how much that blue changes that yellow. It's huge. Darker colors always have a bigger amount of change than a lighter color. This will prevent you guys from wasting a lot of time mixing your paints and wasting a lot of paint. Okay? So I'm going to look at that color, and I actually think that probably looks too, I need to add a little bit more blue. So I'm going to add another little scoop of blue to this. And I'm happier with this color. Now, how do you know if you've got a good green? I have a finished color wheel up here on the board that's been painted with this paint. It's a different worksheet. It looks different, but it's using the same paint. If you're like, okay, I don't know if this is a good green, don't ask me if it's a good green. I want you guys to figure this out for yourself. Grab your palette, walk it up here to the front of the board, and compare it to my green that I have there. Look at it and ask yourself, is it close?
I'm just kidding.
When you're ready, then start painting it in.
Doing the yellow green one?
I'm doing my green.
Scotty, can I ask you a question? You see how like there's more like what's the like?
So it's telling you need more paint.
Are we doing just the green one or the yellow?
I'm doing the green.
So,
If you look, I'm painting my green.
It's green.
if you need it to be darker, we should add more blue to it.
This is what you got to figure out, but yes.
But you need to do green. Miss Carol, which one are we doing? Yellow, green, or green?
I'm doing, if you look up on the board,
Yeah, I
I'm
see
doing
that.
green.
Okay.
Now, if you guys look at my paint swatch here, I'm starting to paint this in here. My paint looks really thin. Most likely it's because my brush is wet now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let this paint dry, and I'll paint another coat of green on top, and that will help darken this. But I need to let this first layer dry first. So it's not that I don't like my green, it's just that it's a little too transparent right now. So I'm going to let that dry, that coat of green dry. And then once it's dry, I'm going to go back over with another layer of green. Again, if you're not sure if you have a good one, bring your palette up here, check my finished one, and ask yourself, what do you think you need to do to fix it? Or maybe you're good to go. Start painting it in.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead and paint it down and then see what you think. Paint it down on there. See what you think.
Okay.
So now what I'm going to do, while this green is drying, I'm going to go ahead and deal with my tertiary colors, yellow green and blue green, okay? So here's the trick with these, okay? I'm going to just kind of zoom into this. Is that when you're mixing these tertiary or intermediate colors, it goes by both names, is that you want to make sure, like yellow-green, looks like it belongs right in the middle of yellow and green. So you don't want it to match green, and you certainly don't want it to look like yellow. It has to be in the middle, a perfect marriage or mixture of the two. Same thing with the blue-green, okay? You want a perfect middle in between the green and the blue. So what you're going to find here, guys, is that this color wheel is basically just one big formula. When you look at where your blue and yellow are, and you go to see what's directly in the middle of those two, you have green. So it tells you to make green, you mix yellow and blue together. How do you make blue-green? Look at the two colors on either side of it, green and blue. It's telling you how to make these colors. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start making, let's see here, I'll do my yellow-green first. Now I do find that the tertiary or the intermediate colors are the ones I have to play with the most. These are the ones I go back and forth with a lot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by taking a scoop of my green. Now I still want to leave some up there. So I'm going to start with a scoop of my green, and I'm going to add a scoop of my yellow to that. And I'm going to mix it up. And I'm going to keep adding the yellow to it until I figure out and find a good yellow-green. I don't want it to be close to my green, so I've got my green pile right next to it so I can easily compare the two. And that looks pretty, that looks different than the green, and it looks different than the yellow, so I'm going to try this. Now here's the thing you'll find too, guys, is a lot of times when you paint these colors down, it might look right on your palette and it may not look right on your worksheet when you paint it on there. A lot of times it's just a matter of putting a second coat on it. But again, remember, in order to put a second coat down, you got to make sure that that first coat is dry first. If you don't wait till it's dry, you will find that it'll just kind of, you're just going to move or rub off that first layer. And I'll probably have to do that to this also too. Put a second coat on that. So there's my yellow-green. While I'm waiting for the yellow-green to dry, I'm going to go ahead and paint my second layer on my green. There's my green. So now you guys can see how different that green of mine looks now that I just put a second coat on it. It really does help. But again, the trick is you got to make sure that that first layer is dry first. Now, one thing you will find is acrylic, it doesn't take too long for acrylic to dry. It's a quicker drying paint than some of the others out there, like watercolors and oils for sure. So it doesn't take long for these first layers to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and paint another layer for my yellow-green. Huh? Look at my worksheet up there and ask yourself, what do you think could be better? Here, pull that, take it right up there. Look at your yellow-green. Does that, here, hold on a second. You don't have it labeled right. Do you see how, see, it should say yellow, yellow-green, green. Blue, green, blue. You have this mislabeled, so I need to get you another worksheet. Alright, so there, if you guys look at my color wheel, I put a second coat on my yellow, green, and green. You can see them look a lot better. You can look at Jordan to see how she was a bit closer. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my blue-green. So what I'm going to do, I've got my green pile, I also have my yellow-green pile. I can use that if I want to. But I'm going to start with my green pile, and I'm just going to take a small amount of my blue, because again, that blue being so dark, it doesn't take much to make a change. I'm going to mix that in with my green pile. Now that I'm done with that, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't match my green too much, but then it's, again, doesn't match my blue too much. I need it right in the middle. Add just a little bit. So again, too, sometimes what I'll do is just kind of put my brush up against it. Alright, so I think I've got something to play with here. I need to go more blue. So in this situation, guys, I thought I had a good blue-green, and then I put it down on my worksheet. I was like, nope, that's not right. So I'm going to go back, remix, and just paint on top of it. That looks better. I might even still add more blue. Now your goal today, guys, is to get these 4 paint wedges, or these 4 wedges on your color wheel, painted in. So there's my blue-green. It's kind of hard to see on the Epson just because my paint's wet, so it looks shiny. But you will notice that that blue-green gets pretty dark. And what I'll do is I'll kind of zoom in on this for you guys so you can see it. So again, guys, if your paint color looks a little thin or a little too transparent, let that first layer dry, paint over it with the second coat, and you'll see a big difference. It'll look much better.